Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. In this video, I'm going to continue my descendancy research from Henry J. Snellgrove. In the previous video, I had worked out a mystery where there were some children I wasn't sure they belonged, and so we got that figured out. And the next step is to now start going through the children of Henry J. Snellgrove and his wife Leah. And the oldest is Johnnie, so let's click through and see what we've got. So I've got 7 record hints, and this child was created from the 1910 and 1920 census that I had attached previously to Henry and Leah. And he was listed, so I attached these records to him and created his profile and ancestry. I've got 7 record hints. I haven't previewed these ahead of time, so I'm not really sure what will be there. One thing I want to note, though, is Johnnie here is born about 1905, so very likely he was still alive in the 1950s, and if he was married and had children, they could be listed in those census, and it's possible that I might start running into people who are still alive. So if that's the case, as I go through, I'm going to blur their names out so they're not visible on camera. And I usually go as far into descendancy research until I start hitting living people, and then I stop and I go back in time and start coming forward again. We'll take a look at the record hints and see what's there. Most likely his wife and Johnnie are probably deceased. If he was born in 1905, he'd be close to 125 years old. Let's look at what we have on Family Search. So I like to work in parallel. So I've got Johnnie on the right here and Johnnie, the Family Search profile, on the left. And it looks like I've got a birth date in place. I've got several record hints that need to be attached. And if I scroll down, it looks like there's a wife here in Family Search. So when I go and I look at the record hints on Ancestry, I'm going to see if this information matches up. So let's get into it. Usually I start in Ancestry first and I go through the record hints there. So let's click through. Okay, so I've got a William J. Snellgrove and a Lillian Snellgrove, and I've got a child. I've got a 1930 census, 1940 census. I've got a death index record. Where's Johnnie W. Snellgrove? I've got a find a grave record and obituary, and also a Social Security application index. This record is for their daughter, Martha, and so that probably means that she is deceased as well. Usually I also get an ancestry member tree hint. I don't usually look at those unless I'm a little bit lost and see what other people are saying. I don't usually take those at face value unless I look at them in more detail. I usually just ignore those. They don't go away completely. They're in the ignored tab. I'm going to look at the Family Search. Says that his name is Johnnie William Snellgrove, which is very likely. You'll also notice that Henry's last name is spelled with 2 L's. His is spelled with 1. The record hints are all with 2 L's, so I might change that to 2. We can look at the record hints here. The census has them as 1 L, but everything else, like his obituary, has 2 L's, which means that would have been something that family would have created. So very likely he had 2 L's in his name. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. And sometimes when you're in Family Search and you go to change, you'll notice the name is in this X Latin box, and really it should be in English, and this top one is Roman. What I like to do when I see that is to fix it. The language for the name is correct. So, and then I just delete that. I can explain that if you want. That's very common in profiles which have been in Family Search for a really long time. Okay, we'll hit save. That changes that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Ancestry and start going through. So very likely these record hints for him in Ancestry that say William are probably him. This one here probably is correct, Johnnie. And why it's spelled one way versus another, I don't know. You can see here on his death index record, it's spelled this way. That's probably the spelling I'm going to keep. Okay, so I'm going to look at this 1930 census first. And I can see here his birth year is 1904 in Georgia. And he's a machinist, so that's interesting. We've got his wife and a daughter. And we saw over here that his daughter's full name is Martha Montine. So when we create her profile, we'll add that. And I'm pretty sure she's deceased. We can look at this record hint first, actually. And this doesn't usually give you the full details, but this says Martha Montine, and she's probably deceased if she's in this index. So let's go ahead and just go through this one, I guess, first. And we've got the name of the mother and then the daughter, and we've got her birthday. Okay. I like to standardize the locations because that helps with record hinting. And we've got a death date. So we'll hit save. Okay. All right, and this screen will update as we go along. So, all right, so let's go back to the 1930 census. And we'll go ahead and add that because we're pretty sure that's a match. Okay, so when we look at Lillian, we've got birth year, okay, and then we've got the daughter, which matches. So we'll hit save. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep going through these record hints, and once we get done with that, we'll look and see what we've got. This death record index for Johnnie gives a death date and death place, which I don't currently have on my profile. So I definitely want to add this and the information that it has. Death index is based off of an original record, and if you can, you should probably try to find the original record. Here is the certificate number, so you could contact Georgia archives or however they're stored there in Georgia and actually get a copy of that if that would interest you. Family Search and Ancestry has been starting to add actual original death records, death certificates in their collections, and so just kind of keep an eye out. It just depends on the state and their laws and when they release those publicly. If this is your family member and you want to get his actual death certificate, it looks like there's one that's available. Okay, this obituary is interesting. It seems to be a match. It says J.W. Snellgrove in Macon Telegraph, which would be in Georgia, which would make sense. And it says his mother is Leah. And then it has a sibling, Marvin George. And so I took a second here to look and see who his siblings are. I don't have a Marvin George. So let me go and look at Family Search. There's not a Marvin George listed there either. So I'm not really sure if this is him. I mean, it seems to match. You got J.H. Snellgrove and Leah Snellgrove as the parents. So for the moment, I'm gonna put this as a maybe and come back to this later. I've been through all of the current record hints here for Johnnie William Snellgrove and his wife. I still need to go through and his daughter. It's possible there are some additional records available for this person, and so sometimes when I feel like there's not enough records here, I will just do a search on Ancestry and see if there's any more. Ancestry is not going to serve up all the possible records that are available. It's going to pull the most likely available to you, and then you need to search for the rest. So, for example, here's his World War II draft card. That was not a hint for him. This J.H. Snellgrove, that's interesting. Uh, I wonder if this H was indexed incorrectly, so I'd want to look at that because it's Lillian and J.H. is a machinist, which seems to match. So I want to look at that a little bit closer. Okay, that is a W. I know it looks like an H, but that's a W. And the thing to know about the 1950s census is that it was indexed by computer first, and then people looked at the computerized index and just said, is this a match? And so if you're not looking carefully, it can look like an H, but look up here. See, here's a William, and see how that W is made. It's a very unusual W, I'd have to say. It's very unique, but that's a W. So this is a match for our person. So we're gonna definitely add this 1950 census. And it looks like they're empty nesters at that point because their daughter is not with them. So let's add this record to him. Okay, so you can see here we also got another record hand. So let's see. Oh, it's recommending this ancestry member tree again. But there was that World War II draft card. I want to go grab that as well. Draft cards are interesting because it can give you some information about your family member that you may not have known about. So when I go and look at this, okay, so it gives birthplace as Ben Hill County, Georgia. So we didn't have that before. It says employer's name. So he worked at a railroad in the shops. His name and address of person who will always know is Mrs. J.H. Snellgrove. Sometimes it will say the wife's name instead of a Mrs. The second page of the draft card will tell you the physical characteristics of the person. So you've got height and weight, we've got eye color, hair color, complexion, any other physical characteristics. So that could be a physical injury or tattoo or something like that. And that's it. So that's good. So let's save that to our person here, Johnnie William. All right, so I think there was some other records. I just want to look one more time. So let's see, when I scroll down, okay, I've got a Johnnie William Snellgrove in the Navy, and that could very well be him. The thing is, he would have been 38 years old when he registered for the draft. He was 38 years old, which would have made him on the outer edge of eligibility for the initial draft. So there was two drafts. There was one for younger men and one for older men. And I can't remember the cutoff years, but it's in the late 30s of when he would have been drafted. So I'm not entirely sure this would have been him. But this John L. Snellgrove and Waycross, machinist, that might be him because, again, it could be just a misspelling. Then there's a John W. Snellgrove in Augusta, Georgia with a Lenora, so that's not him. So, oh, this railroad retirement pension, November 1903 to February 1968. Let's look and see if that matches what I have. Yes, so he worked for the railroad before the war, so it would make sense that he might retire from the railroad. So that's probably him. So let's save that to him as well. Okay, so definitely some other record possibilities here on Ancestry, but for my purposes, I want enough records to know who this person is. Is he a connecting link between Henry J. Snellgrove and further descendants? So the answer to that is yes. I have enough records to feel comfortable of who this person is. And I can say, you know, he was born in 1903 in Georgia, and we did learn that he was born in Ben Hill from his draft card, so let's add that. And he married a Lillian Walker and a daughter, Martha, who's also now passed away. So let's look at family search, and you can see here we've got the death index record that we've just added. We have the World War II draft card that needs to be added. And we have a Social Security numerical identification file record, which is probably for his daughter, Martha. Yes, Martha. And we've got a married name for her. So we'll look at that in a little bit. Now, as far as his profile here on Family Search, we don't have his death date. So let's add the death date. And that would have been in the Georgia Index death record. And we'll attach this record hint here that will help provide the source for that death date. Okay. I don't have a marriage date for Johnny. He was still living at home in 1920 with his parents. He would have been about 17 years old then, so probably wasn't married. But by 1930, he is married and has a child. So let's see. Yeah, he's married. Yeah, he's got a child. So, but we don't have marriage years in the 1930 census, so we can't really estimate when he might have gotten married. And hopefully some Georgia marriage records will pop up here. We can add a marriage date for him. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and attach the rest of the records in Family Search to Johnny, and then we'll work on Lillian and get her done as well. Okay, so I have attached all the records except for the Social Security record for the daughter. I'm going to leave the Social Security record for the daughter here until I look at her more closely, and I'll do that off camera just to protect privacy of any potential living people and their family. But I do want to add probably the daughter because she is deceased to Family Search, just to have her in here. I'm going to start now working on Johnny's wife, Lillian. So I'm going to click over. And it looks like she's got quite a few sources and everything attached here. And she's attached to parents. Let's go back over to Ancestry and work through those sources. So there's like 9 record hints. Okay, so I've attached all the records for Lillian. I'm just going to do a really quick search because sometimes you can get the marriage record through the wife for whatever reason over versus the husband. So let's see if I can find a marriage record. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything on the first page. I could delve deeper, but for the most part, we're just gonna move along, and we'll call it here at this point. The next thing for me to do is to look at the daughter's information, and very certainly I'll run into people who are still living, and so I will work on that off camera and probably add Martha to Family Search because she's not currently in there. When we come back for the next video, we'll work on one of Johnny's siblings. I hope that was helpful seeing the process as I go through this descendancy research, and it's interesting to learn more about the Snellgrove family and to see what's happened to the family over time. So anyway, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.